And I'll fly on the wings of a butterfly as a treetop.
All right. Welcome to the Green Garden, everyone. Welcome to the Nature Explore and Health series, and we are going to be sharing some wonderful information with you today. We just wanted to open with that vision of being in a green garden to go along with our presentation today. Thanks to Ms. Farjana Islam for that selection. And my name is Kimberly Conway. I serve as the Partnerships, Diversity, and Inclusion Specialist for the Conservation and Education Program at the U.S. Forest Service in the Washington office. And we welcome you to this session today of Nature Explore and Health. And we see the plus sign there in the middle, uniting those together. And this is a program in which speakers will be sharing program updates and then also expanding connections. And we're very grateful to our partners at Corazon Latino for co-hosting the webinar today. And I'll turn it over to, Sonia's not here, so I'll turn it over to Chelsea Rangel, who is doing work in the community as a partnerships and partnerships manager for Corazon Latino, and she will provide us with some Zoom guidance for today.
Sure, thanks, Kimberly. My name's Chelsea Rangel, and I'm really excited to be here today as part of this conversation. A few things we want to go over. Webinar rules, basic housekeeping. Everyone's microphones when you enter the webinar are automatically muted. If you have a question, there's a Q&A box. Please enter your question there or in the chat box. We'll address these at the end of the presentation. This webinar is going to be recorded, so if you would like a copy of that afterwards, please just send Sonia an email at sonia@corazonlatino.us.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. And we are just really honored today to bring together several very powerful thought leaders and action figures who are really making tremendous advances in health and nature in this entire movement. And the Forest Service has partnered with Dimensions Educational Research Foundation and the Nature Explorer program for many years, and we've been involved together and collaborated around a number of different models in a variety of regions throughout the nation. But the type of model that we're going to be focusing upon today is a very special model. It's a unique model that really focuses upon the creation of nature-based spaces in healthcare settings. And we'll hear stories from a variety of leaders who are doing amazing work. We'll actually hear from some of our partners in Texas, where the first Nature Explorer healthcare site was implemented. And that was nearly 4 years ago, and now there's another budding Nature Explorer site that will be coming to us soon at the University of Florida, Shands Children's Hospital. And so today we'll be sharing a vision of even some modified models of innovation at a health center in Washington, D.C. called Unity Healthcare, the Cardozo Center. So today we're going to be hearing from doctors, we'll be hearing from natural resource managers and professionals in the field. We'll hear from researchers and also practitioners and grassroots leaders who are enabling this work to really reach diverse audiences as they share in all of these different efforts in helping to connect individuals and communities to nature for improved health. And with that, I'll turn the program over to Mr. John Rosno, who is the Development Director for the Dimensions Educational Research Foundation and the Nature Explorer program. And John is actually the original founder and served as the CEO for many years for the Arbor Day Foundation. So we applaud you for igniting that fire. And now we're fortunate that John has moved into the Development Director position with Dimensions, because John is really a strategic collaborator. He really brings people, corporations, foundations, government, and nonprofit all together to the table to really help to create these nature-rich environments for children and their families, and now in this case for patients, for doctors, and for staff at these medical centers. And he has a lot of experience collaborating and around business and missions, objectives to help support these Nature Exp classrooms that help support the missions of these organizations. He is experienced in creating win-win cause marketing programs with large and small companies, from neighborhood businesses to Fortune 100 corporations. And he spearheaded small to multi-million-dollar collaborations with foundations, companies, and government agencies which successfully meet their respective goals. So with that, please join me in welcoming Mr. John Rosenow.
Thank you so much, Tamberly, and I want to begin by acknowledging and congratulating everyone who's a part of this movement. When the Dimensions Foundation began the research that led to Nature Exp classrooms 10, 15 years ago, health concerns of children were at the forefront of the need. Life-threatening allergies hadn't been there 20, 50 years ago. Children. Obesity is a serious issue. Many of the challenges that children are facing in our world today have come back to the disconnection from nature. So we're just thrilled to have the health community at the forefront now of recognizing this importance in this work and all the different ways that that's being approached. So first, lots of acknowledgments for that. Really excited about the prospect of having more Nature Exp classrooms at medical facilities. I might just make a couple of points. I know people know many different things about Nature Exp probably, but just I want to emphasize a couple of points I think they're are relevant to the opportunities that we have. A reminder, one of the success factors behind Nature Exp classrooms is that there are opportunities for all learning styles for children. It's far more than great Nature Exp classrooms are far more than beautiful green spaces, although certainly that's a profound part of the space. But having all learning styles supported is why children thrive there, why schools and childcare centers want to have Nature Exp classrooms, and those same principles will profoundly apply at medical centers and medical clinics and hospitals as well. It's a difference between, oh, that was interesting for 10 minutes, the child might experience, versus they want to be there for hours and come back the next day and do something new. So we very deliberately, with a lot of research behind it, design distinct outdoor classroom spaces for children that support different learning styles, from music and movement to Felipe's son, as I recall, is especially drawn to the music part of Nature Exp classrooms. It could be building for someone else or climbing and crawling, whatever a child that day is interested in. Having that experience available amongst nature is why they work. So we want to really keep that in mind. Also, there's a wonderful objective with this health movement to make these spaces positive for the caretakers as well, for the docs and the staff and so forth. And we have found that again and again, a well-designed Nature Exp classroom that really serves the children well and is rich in nature is a great haven for adults as well. We have these at domestic violence shelters, as an example, at military bases where the soldiers use them. Certainly, child care providers, teachers thrive in the spaces as well as the children. So if we design them well for the children with lots of nature, they'll work well for adults as well. Now, the opposite is not necessarily the case. We can have a green, wonderful, beautiful space for adults, but it's important to have the play opportunities for children as well. What the academicians call play affordances, fun stuff for kids to do amongst that nature, so they're drawn to that again and again and can be creative and cooperative. So as we work together in the medical community, thinking of the adults, and I sincerely believe that this will have an impact on the docs and the nurses and everybody on the staff, that doing it well for children first and foremost is what will make that happen. Tammy was just mentioned in the ride coming over here, the results in Los Angeles as an example at their early education programs, where they're seeing greatly reduced teacher turnover, much less teacher absences, because the experience is so much more positive for children and the teachers as well. So it just makes being there more fun, life better. One other thing that's happening in Los Angeles, because of horrific commutes, they support teachers in transferring to schools near their homes if they wish. Places that have nature explorer classrooms and the teacher transfer away to their home, the teachers want to transfer back because the teaching experience is so much better where the children have that nature as a part of their lives every day. So I'm really excited about the impacts that I think will be there for not only the children that are supported, and the children desperately need these kind of nurturing experiences in their lives, but the adults that care for them and are part of that mission, I think, will just thrive at these spaces as well. We saw today at Unity one of the spatial realities of what places have to work with. The available place would probably be a rooftop. And we've done some rooftop nature explorer classrooms. That's if there's enough superstructure to support plants and people, we're in business. But so from that to generous outdoor space, many kinds of spaces work well for nature explorer classrooms, and we want to be supportive of that in any way we can. So really excited to do that. Oh, one other thing to emphasize that I've heard in prior calls, this whole process we've learned can be a long, time-consuming, calendar-consuming process if we don't have designers who really know what they're doing to make that happen. We went to great lengths at Dimensions to invent a process to make that fast and affordable and very interactive. We send out a landscape architect educator team. We brief the on-staff folks in advance about what we'll be looking for, try to involve neighbors, staff, parents, on and on. So it's a truly collaborative process, but very fast and affordable. So I'll champion our own design process, but it can make it fast and really reflect the wishes of the program. One place they want a great big garden, another place they want more music opportunities. We found in Los Angeles, home of Hollywood, we can't build a stage big enough. So we really want to reflect the interest of the programs in the spaces where the parents are in the wine industry. We plant grape vines there so children can identify with what their parents do. That's nature explorer classrooms in Catholic schools where there's a rosary walk. So just really trying to reflect the interest of the programs. But that design process, which also creates a fundraising tool very often, makes this a user-friendly process based on what works for children. We've designed hundreds of these spaces so we really know what works for children. So excited to be really engaged with the medical communities and here to listen about how we support them, working here in DC, hopefully, and throughout the nation with the great work that you all are doing. So thank you, Tamara, for letting me be here.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much for your contributions and for the amazing partnership with Nature Explorer and Dimensions, and for your innovation and your vision for moving this in different directions. And I'll just mention that I know you mentioned before about LA and the public schools and the reduced turnover rates of the educators and administrators, et cetera. And it is a concern of Dr. Robert Czar and also Dr. Dan Porter, who will be our next speaker up, about the issues surrounding turnover rates there at these health centers and hospitals and whatnot, just because of the high levels of stress. And we really feel like, these spaces can help to reduce that turnover rate and provide a space of respite, to be in a therapeutic space and kind of reboot for the day. And, with that, I'm really excited to turn the mic over to Dr. Dan Porter, who, whenever he started looking at the site at the Lone Star Family Health Center in Texas, I remember him saying, I want this right outside of my window. So we know that the doctors are really interested in these spaces. And the next story we'll hear is from Dr. Porter, and he will actually help to share John Warner's story as well, who is with the Texas A&M Forest Service, because this has been an amazing collaboration of partners helping to implement the Nature Explore site to drive other aspects of health and nature connections that we'll hear about today. So with that, I'll also mention that, again, John Warner can't be here with us. He's actually with Senator Cornyn's office at the forest as we speak. And so I'm hopeful he's talking about this today with them as well. But John has found himself working for nearly 30 years at Texas A&M Forest Service. He enjoys reimagining the role of a forester in urban and traditional environments. And he's continuously, and I know he is, we work very closely together, and he is envisioning always new collaborative partnerships that keep natural resource management relevant and on the front line. He's an urban district forester, he's a certified forester, an arborist, urban landscape design planner, an educator, natural resource interpreter, communicator, and a husband and a dad. And I just wanted to mention John because he is a part of what Dr. Porter will be talking about here in a moment. Dr. Daniel Porter, is a pediatrician and a Nature Rx pioneer. He's been doing this work now for about almost 10 years, working with the National Environmental Education Foundation, really weaving this work into his work as a pediatrician and inspiring many others throughout the nation. Dr. Porter graduated from the University of Texas of Health Science Center at San Antonio Long School of Medicine in 2006. He currently practices at the Lone Star Family Health Center and is affiliated with the Conroe Regional Medical Center, where his innovative work in connecting patients and their families to the outdoors for improved health has really opened doors to partnerships and collaborations among a wide variety of agencies and organizations. And with that, I will turn the mic over to Dr. Porter, so please join me in welcoming Dr. Porter.
And I hope this worked.
It's working. All right. Hi.
You can all be jealous because I'm sitting in my office looking at my Nature Explorer classroom.
Yeah. All right.
And it's a beautiful, like, crisp blue, sunny sky and breeze blowing and all kinds of grasses and trees and leaves changing. So, nah, get outside.
I think we see your view on this slide. So we're with you, Dr. Porter.
So I'm probably the fourth window from the far right, that you see.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Hey.
Yeah, so it's been an adventure and it's been great as and just to let you know, I'm rather than a pediatrician, I'm a family medicine doctor, but I see a tremendous number of kids. We're a federally qualified health center, kind of a underserved safety net facility for the county. We're going to exceed 100,000 patient visits this year, serving about 30,000 patients, and probably 40 to 50% of those are children. Definitely an underserved population, probably 40 to 50% Hispanic patients. And yeah, it's been an incredible thing to be associated with John Warner and all the other partners in bringing something very unique to a federally qualified health center that we were very proud to know that we were the first to bring a Nature Explorer classroom to in the country. And we opened it in April of 2016 after quite a bit of going back and forth. Of course, when you're dealing with CEOs and CFOs and these kind of C people, you're dealing with, it's such a foreign concept to them, I think, that it did take a little bit of convincing. And, they had their genuine concerns about, well, if a child gets hurt on a Nature Explorer classroom on our site, what does that mean? And how do we prevent kids from running out into the parking lot? And how high of objects do you build on the site for kids to jump off of? And are you going to have poisonous plants? Are you going to have bees showing up? So that it's, you just have to have people that can convince those C-suite people that this is an important thing. And I think once it was finished, it really set into them the importance of it. And it's been just such a great launching pad for other partnerships and activities that we've been able to do with our patients. So yeah, the classroom just kind of opened a lot of doors, and it's not a day that goes by when I don't see kids out and families out and adults out by themselves sitting in our space, just enjoying the atmosphere and the environment. We have a nice water feature that has a little bit of running brook sound to it via some pumps and running water. And from the photographs, you can tell that this space was going to be originally landscaped for the building. It was just an area of grass, very flat, and just a little bit of edge plants around it. And so it didn't take a whole lot of space. I think the space is about 600 square feet. And you can see that it just blossomed into something completely different than the normal area around a building. And it's not been an expensive thing to upkeep in terms of the cost versus just regular landscaping. And it hasn't required a tremendous amount of ongoing expense, which is always nice for the CFO to realize. So in addition to having this space, we've been doing prescriptions for nature with our patients for years. And just to inform you also that we have 30 family medicine resident physicians training under us at any one time at this facility. And so introducing them to the idea of prescribing nature for our patients, we've been able to train them and get them excited about it too. And if we didn't have enough going on, we got involved with doing Walk with a Doc program. So we currently do that once a week at one of our local parks. We really don't have a nice walking area around our clinic per se, so we chose to go to a park to meet our patients and our staff there to do the walks on Tuesday evenings. And then recently we've been doing a really nice fun project with John Warner over at the Jones State Forest with forest bathing and looking at each of the populations of people that come to the event. And we did a pre-survey and a post-survey mood survey, and then we also took blood pressures pre and post activity. And we've had one event, and we're excited that the next event is coming up in first week of December. That's the photographs that you're seeing now was from our first forest bathing event. And it turned out outstanding. There's a couple of our providers are in that photograph, and then a couple of our nurses from the clinic who helped me out doing the blood pressures. And here are some results of that. We had 11 participants, and we had a 13% decrease in their systolic pressures and 2% decrease in their diastolics. And we did have a mood improvement post-event. Now I want to, this was a very first attempt at this. I definitely want to get a more detailed survey going and ask more questions. And I would love for us to get funding on something like cortisol levels or something like that, pre and post. But it's just going to take off from here in terms of the way we do that. My resident docs are already wanting their own forest bathing event because they want to de-stress. And like Tamberly was talking about, we've had some conversations about the fact that there's a lot of burnout discussion among healthcare providers, regardless of where you practice. And being able to introduce some of these concepts of nature, of mindfulness, relaxation during your workday, I think is something that we really need to be looking into more and more. So I hope to do some studies on that with my residents, having them do some exploring of nature during their lunch breaks and see how they're doing pre and post also. So I didn't want to eat up all of the time. I'm not sure. I can.
Dr. Porter, we are actually going to go back to the video, and this is a video that was produced by the Texas A&M Forest Service, focused upon the Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives initiative. And so they were very excited about all of the work in which Dr. Porter and his colleagues are engaged. And so they really wanted to highlight and focus around Dr. Porter and some of the connections. Many of the connections that are being made do happen at the Gem State Forest, which is literally just down the road. It's about a 10-minute drive, if that. And, you know, again, Dr. Porter mentioned the health and nature and the forest bathing that just happened, but also there's an Agents of Discovery site at the Gem State Forest that patients and their families can utilize. People come from all over the urban setting to visit this little green jewel in the middle of Conroe, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump from Houston, really about 30 minutes from Houston. And so, you know, again, I think this is a model at which we can see the Nature Explore site really help to plant some seeds of opportunity for expansion into other areas, such as Walk with the Doc and, you know, such as the Agents of Discovery site, and now Nature and Forest Therapy. And I know this is a vision that Dr. Czar has as well, as bringing together these buffet of opportunities, so to speak, so that doctors and staff have opportunities to provide to their patients. And this is just a really fine example. So what we'll do is we'll hear we'll watch this video, and then we'll be turning it over to Mary Margaret Dowd. So Mary Margaret, I know if you're out there, we're trying to make your connection here. So let's go ahead and see the video, and we will work on the technical piece.
Dr. Daniel Porter from Lone Star Family Health Center. We're a federally qualified health center out of Conroe, Texas. We serve 90,000 patient visits a year, and I try to write a prescription for nature instead of a prescription for drugs. We have a printout that comes out of our electronic health software, and choices for them in terms of local things that they can go explore, and then we try to get them to commit. Even if it's just once a week, we go spend an hour outside. A lot of mental health issues we care for out of this clinic too. Depression, anxiety. As a primary care doctor, you start wondering, what else can I offer my patients rather than just giving them the next pill? To create the first Nature Explore classroom at FQHC in the entire country. So that's one aspect, is the prescription. The other is that we try to do a Walk with a Doc program once a week. So we encourage our patients to join us at the local park. We're walking with a doc, and we start with a 10-minute presentation on a health topic, and then walk for about an hour. And you're walking with your doc. More and more data is showing that when we have access to natural space, when people spend more time outside, we get reductions in those diseases, and they get treated better. As the science progresses, that's what I buy into. That's what I'm bred to do, is to listen to science, and I want the proof, and I want evidence that it's working. So as a primary care physician, I'm trying to take care of the whole patient and the whole family for that sake, and that boosts the health of that patient and boosts the health of our community.
Excellent. Oh, where's the message? Wonderful. And I'll just mention too that the Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives campaign is a digital media campaign. We were just able to work with not just the Texas A&M Forest Service, but the Southern Group of State Foresters in helping to develop what you see in front of you into Spanish language, because they were seeing a great need for Spanish language support. And so through the Limited English Proficiency Initiative with the U.S. Forest Service and support of the Civil Rights Program here, we were able to move forward with that effort. And so we look forward to working with organizations that can help us to spread these messages related to healthy trees and healthy lives. And now we're going to try to get Mary Margaret on board. Mary Margaret, are you out there with us?
I am. Can y'all hear me?
Oh, how wonderful. Can you get back? Yeah, we're just going. I'm going to get back to the neat slide, Mary Margaret, for you.
That's okay. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you, Mary Margaret. And Mary Margaret is now serving as the president and CEO of the National Environmental Education Foundation. And the National Environmental Education Foundation has been a primary partner in both the Lone Star Family Medical Center site with Nature Explorer and also with the Shands Children's Hospital that you'll hear about in just a few moments. So we're so grateful, Mary Margaret, that you were able to join us today, and we'd love to hear from you.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much. And we can beat technology when we work together. So thank you guys for hooking me in, particularly sort of at the last minute. But it's really a pleasure to be with all of you today. This is such important work. We're grateful for the partnership and the understanding that to really make an impact on this important work of connecting health and the environment, health and nature, we need to work together. And that's really, really important to NEAF as we have a very bold vision of reaching 300 million Americans and help them use environmental knowledge and engagement as part of their everyday routine. So many of the things we've already covered and also are covering later today will really speak to that. We are very interested, certainly with 300 million Americans, in getting to diverse communities, which was mentioned earlier, and looking at health equity and engaging children, as we've already talked a little bit about. I'm the mom of an almost 11-year-old boy, and I know how important it is to have that time outside. And I've told our Forest Service partners already, they've heard my spiel. For me personally, the connection between public health and personal health really and the natural world is super important to me. I'm really passionate about it. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with you guys in that part of our work, and then also the work that we do at NEAF, working through more formal education with teachers and some of the work that we've been doing and already been mentioned a little bit, that opportunity to connect not just through nature, but through our healthcare providers is really important in many of these communities. We're really able to make that connection through outdoor activity and also helping reduce the barriers to having some of these children get outside. So really important to leverage that connection between the federal agency partnership, the partnership of those on the phone, working through healthcare providers. Again, being a mom of a small child, certainly when he was just born, anything my healthcare provider, but pediatrician told me I did. So there's really an opportunity for us to make a difference here and motivate and open the doors and have those beautiful settings available in so many places in our lives to help with some of the benefits we've been talking about. So thank you guys for the partnership. We're excited to be here and learn more about some of the results and continue the work as we move forward.
Thank you so much, Mary Margaret. Thank you for your support of this work, and I can tell your passion just runs deep, and especially you have littles of your own, so you know how important this work really is. Yeah. So we're just grateful that you were able to join us today and to share your insight and your passion for this work. And now I'd love to turn over the program to just a wonderful friend and colleague in this realm, Dr. Naomi Sachs. Dr. Sachs is a postdoctoral associate at the Cornell University Department of Design and Environmental Analysis, and she's also the founding director of the Therapeutic Landscapes Network. This is a knowledge base and gathering space that provides information, education, advocacy, and inspiration about landscapes that promote health and well-being. The Therapeutic Landscapes website is www.healinglandscapes.org, and there it is right there in the slide for you. And it really serves as a global interdisciplinary network of designers, health and human service providers, scholars, and garden and nature enthusiasts So I think that really reaches out to all of us who are in the room. We fit in there somewhere. And her current projects at Cornell are actually revolving around research of mental and behavioral health environment, study of undergraduate students' experiences with nature, evaluation of healthcare gardens, and studying the correlation between urban green space and violent crime. At Cornell, Naomi serves on the Nature Exp at Cornell Steering Committee and is an industry advisor for the Institute for Healthy Futures. I'm also really excited to announce that starting in fall of 2019, she's going to be here. She'll be joining the faculty at University of Maryland as an assistant professor in plant sciences and landscape architecture. And we're so excited, Naomi, that you were able to join us today. And she'll also be sharing some information from Annie Hermanson-Baez, who is the center manager at the Southern Research Station, program manager for Shan Children's Hospital Therapeutic Nature Explorer. And Annie's really been at the forefront of really driving nature access for diverse children and their families through the More Kids in the Woods program, and also through providing linguistically relevant materials to LEP audiences through her work with the Southern Research Station. So we're grateful, Naomi, that you can be here with us today in person and here on the webinar for all of those out there, and to share the story of your engagement with the Forest Service and all of these other partners around this work. So please.
Thank you, Kimberly. And so thanks everyone for hosting. Thanks to the Forest Service for hosting this webinar. I'm thrilled to be here in person. And so I founded the Therapeutic Landscapes Network back in 1999 because there were people who were working on the design of gardens and healthcare facilities and knew that nature was important, but there wasn't a whole lot of information about what we call evidence-based design. So the evidence or the research that one needs to refer to create a good design with positive health outcomes for patients, visitors, and staff. And so the TLN was a way to create kind of a living bibliography of resources, references, lists of gardens, lists of designers and providers who created these spaces. So we know through over 500 studies that nature is important, that it facilitates health and well-being through many different pathways, and I'm not going to go through all of those now. You can look on the TLN website for some good references. And it's always important in all settings, but the reason that I've been focused on healthcare is that in hospitals and other healthcare settings, people are even more vulnerable than they are in your sort of everyday setting. Whether it's a patient who's in pain and worried about an event in their life, or a parent or other family member or friend who's concerned and often very intimidated by a kind of alien, strange environment, or the doctor or nurse or some other healthcare provider who is working 12, even 24-hour shifts, and sometimes with no access to daylight, very little fresh air. It's an overwhelming and overly stimulating environment. And so based on the research that we have about the importance of nature access, and when I say nature access, I mean both visual and physical, and passive meaning just kind of being in nature or viewing nature, and the active would be actually digging in the dirt and getting your hands dirty. So these are all beneficial, and it's a little bit harder in healthcare settings because there are concerns about infection control and kids running around and jumping in water features. You know, all of that stuff is valid and important, but it's also critically important for there to be this kind of antidote to the sterile environment that people find. And so through quantitative research, and especially the qualitative research where people write in surveys about how these gardens make them feel and how nature makes them feel in hospitals. We know that it normalizes the environment. It feels more like home, like something they're used to. It's a really great contrast to what they're experiencing. It soothes them. It provides a feeling of calm. There's something about nature that's very life-affirming. And even seeing death in nature feels normal, whereas death for humans is not normal, and we have a hard time dealing with it. They see hope in nature, rejuvenation. And nature is one of the best forms of positive distraction. So there's that sense of soft fascination that we get when we see a butterfly or hear leaves of a cottonwood tree, or hear bird song, or even just feel the sun on our face. And it also provides a sense of control. So in healthcare, even more than in our everyday lives, people are stripped of control. And they're half naked in their hospital johnnies, and they're getting poked and prodded by doctors, and they're hearing strange sounds, and often they don't know what's going on with their prognosis. And so providing an escape, literal or metaphorical, something to look out onto, something to go out to, just a 5-minute breath of fresh air can be enough to sort of reset and enable people to take a deep breath and continue on either with their treatment or with the treatment of others. So this is an example of what we're moving toward. This beautiful interior space that is bathed with sunlight and lots of daylight coming through, that has an indoor, a lovely indoor space, and looks out onto a green space that is very easily visually and physically accessible. And it has a nice mix of shade and sun, plant material, but also enough hardscape that people with wheelchairs can go out. Someone could even be rolled out on a gurney. I've seen wonderful examples of healthcare facilities where people go out on gurneys. And so this is what we're striving for. And as you've probably seen in the news, there have been more so-called healing gardens, quote-unquote healing gardens. I tend to call them restorative gardens or therapeutic landscapes, or healthcare gardens. But healing gardens is the kind of catch-all term. And we're seeing a lot more of these. And what's encouraging to me now, these are becoming more accepted as part of the fundamental environment of care. So rather than just icing on the cake that gets thrown out the minute that the budget gets a little bit tight, these are seen as essential spaces, even in healthcare facilities where the budget is always tight. And beyond that, healthcare facilities are starting to think of the whole landscape, of the whole property as a potentially restorative environment. So it's not just the one little air shaft courtyard garden that you used to see, but really treating from the moment you enter the property, you have this sense of reassurance that you're going to be taken care of. One of the ways that we gain information and do research about gardens in healthcare facilities is through evaluation, post and pre-occupancy evaluation. This is really important because there's not a lot of, one might say, hard data on gardens and healthcare facilities. It's very hard in general with real live spaces to do randomized controlled trials and that kind of quantitative experiments. But especially when you get outdoors and you've got all kinds of variables. And part of what we love about nature is that there are so many different sensory stimulations, but that's also what makes it very hard to control for an experimental design. And so we've used post-occupancy and in some cases pre-occupancy evaluations to gain insight into what works, what doesn't work, what was the garden planned for, did it work out, what did, what didn't, what could be improved. And pre-OEs and POEs, pre-OEs provide a baseline. So if, for example, at Shands, and I'll talk a little bit about this, the space has been designated as a Nature Explore space, but the garden has not been built yet. So next month, we'll be doing a training and having people go into the space that's there now, which is this kind of underutilized outdoor space, and do some pre-occupancy evaluation of the site. And then once the garden has been built and has grown in for a year, we'll go back and do a very similar process of research and see what the difference is. And of course, we hope that there's more engagement, that people are out there, that there's higher satisfaction levels, that the staff are happier and therefore treating their patients better, and so on. The other thing about evaluation is that it forces facilities to be accountable. So I've seen so many examples of quote unquote healing gardens in healthcare facilities that just make me want to cry, because they're not. You know, one sad sort of wilting Charlie Brown tree and a stone bench, and you know, they get to call it a healing garden because that's what they want to call it, but it really doesn't have enough of those restorative qualities. And we have enough research now to know what is essential in these environments. So for my dissertation, I developed what's called the Healthcare Garden Evaluation Toolkit. And it's a series of, or set of 4 tools that combines qualitative and quantitative or mixed methods research. And one can use the HGET for evaluation of existing or pre-occupancy evaluation of proposed spaces, for design. So one of the tools that I'll talk about can be used as design guidelines, and then for research. So exploring particular hypotheses that one might have about a space. And it was designed to be used by a large group of stakeholders, anyone from designers to healthcare people and researchers. And I'm going to just briefly touch on the GATE, which is probably the easiest to use tool. It's the garden assessment tool for evaluators. It's a semi-objective rating or audit tool. And there are 89 items and 5 domains. So each page, you see there's page 1 is access and visibility, 2 is sense of being away, 3 is nature engagement, 4 is walking activities, and 5 is places to rest. So for each of these pages, there are items that ask specific questions, and those can be agreed or disagreed with on a 1 to 4 Likert scale, of how visible the garden is from indoors, whether the doors are locked or not, or whether they have automatic door openers, how much nature there is in the garden, how much shade there is, whether it's safe for children to play. So all of these that were informed by evidence in the book that Claire Cooper Marcus and I wrote then went into the design of the GATE. And this can really be used as design guidelines too for design of future gardens. So the second tool, and we will be using the GATE and behavior mapping at Shands and hopefully also at Lone Star, and once we get the Unity site up, then we can use it at Unity as well. So behavior mapping is basically a systematic behavior observation of not only who does what when, but also where. So you map out on a plan as you observe people having activities in the garden. And it's very straightforward. It takes time. You need at least 8 hours or a day of observation, but 3 days is ideal. And again, you do this as a baseline before with a pre-OE, and then afterwards as a post-occupancy evaluation. Stakeholder interviews are simple, structured interviews where you have a script and you talk to people about what the garden was planned for and how it worked out in the end. And then the final is surveys, and there's a patient visitor survey and a staff survey. That's a little bit more involved, and we probably won't do that for the Shands site, but it's something that is always available in the toolkit. And this is an image of the Shands Children's Hospital proposed garden that will be, I think they're breaking ground at the beginning of January or in January. So it's very exciting, and I'm also very excited to be getting the research assistants in right before they break ground so that we can get that baseline. And then there's the Lone Star Children's Hospital that you already heard of at Conroe, and we did get a little grant with the U.S. Forest Service to go out there too and do some POEs, and potentially the Unity Health site in Washington, which would be very exciting because it's going to have to incorporate some indoor nature and biophilic design. And here's an example of why we need to bring nature in, as well as, a lot of times in urban environments, there's no way for people to go outside to a big park or even perhaps up to a rooftop. And so if there's a way to paint the lockers or put flowers on the table or something that just brings a little bit of life into these kind of dead spaces, that could really uplift people and help them get through the day. This is an image of the book that I wrote with Claire Cooper Marcus that has those design guidelines and chapters on various different types of gardens. And this is the link to the Therapeutic Landscapes Network.
Thank you so much, Naomi.
Thank you. And now I will take my Naomi mask off and put my Annie mask on. Right. So now I'm Annie. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the garden at Shands Children's Hospital, which Naomi has not seen yet, but Annie knows very well. And so this has been a wonderful collaboration between all of these various stakeholders that you see up on the screen. And so this is the first Nature Explore garden at a hospital, because the Conroe, Texas, the Lone Star site is an outpatient clinic. And so we're very excited to have the first Nature Explore site be at Shands Children's Hospital. It was selected in 2017. The design charrette, which John talked about, was in 2018. And now they're moving forward with the construction. And there are a lot of different people involved, including University of Florida, the U.S. Forest Service station. And based on this multidisciplinary design charrette, which included administrators, nurses, PTs and OTs, pediatricians, and others, they developed the image that you saw in Naomi's presentation. And they're working now with the contractor for the real nuts and bolts. And the Forest Service part of the funding has to be completed by 2019 September. So they're on a tight schedule to get at least the initial portion of it done. An exciting part of this project is that in addition to the more social aspects, the gait map and the behavior mapping tool and the interviews, the U.S. Global Environmental Health and U.S. Forest Service and University of Florida are doing environmental monitoring of air quality and sound. I think they're also measuring maybe light levels. There's one other measurement that Annie, can't remember right now. And also looking to potentially measure levels of anxiety, how much nature dosage does one need, mood, and the child life specialist is very interested in looking at specific social aspects of outdoor play. And that is it, and I will hand the mic over back to Kimberly or someone else. Our pleasure, me and
Yes, and it's really important to see fundamental aspects. So people are realizing that, and it's important to understand about planning so that it can create a really healthy, vibrant, healing garden, and then also the evaluation piece, because that brings around and also helps to integrate the input of the people who are using that space. So thank you for sharing that story. And we are excited to also have with us today, we have John Henderson, who is the Executive Director of Parks North America. And Dr. Robert Czar was not able to join us today. Dr. Azar is the founder and medical director of ParkRx America and is a board-certified pediatrician at Unity Healthcare in Washington, D.C., where he cares for low-income and immigrant populations. He previously served on the National Park Prescription Steering Committee and an advisor to the National Park Service on park prescriptions. Robert received his Doctor of Medicine degree from Baylor College of Medicine and Master of Public Health degree at the University of Texas School of Public Health. So we have two Texas graduates here, I'm pretty sure, with Naomi and Robert. And so Robert is actually attending to patients today. He just met with us over at Unity and gave us a tour of the facility. And John is going to be sharing with us today some wonderful information about ParkRx America and how this ties into our conversation today. John is actually a certified Parks and Recreation executive and city planner of over 25 years of experience in Parks and Rec. And John has earned his Juris Doctorate degree from the John Marshall Law School and a Bachelor's of Community Planning from the University of Cincinnati. And he has a certificate in public performance measures from Rutgers University. He also holds certifications in public participation, mediation, and arbitration, and is a licensed attorney. Ooh, they're lucky to have you aboard. And John established the ParkRx America as a 501c3 nonprofit charity in 2017, and again serves as the executive director. So John, we're so grateful you were able to join us today. And please join me in welcoming John.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. ParkRx America, if you're not familiar with it, is a brand new, we only have been in business for a year and a half, so we're still pretty new, 501c3 organization. And if you look at our mission, it's to decrease the burden of chronic disease, to increase health and happiness, and to foster environmental stewardship. And it's all supposed to be done within the regular doctor visit. And Dr. Czar felt it was really important to be able to do that in order to kind of leverage the trust relationship between the patient and the doctor, to get the patient to do something that they perhaps would not otherwise do. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Dr. Czar is our founder. Kimberly gave a really nice overview of Dr. Czar's credentials. And basically, we are following through on his vision. This all started actually with the National Park Service. The National Park Service brought in the Healthy Parks, Healthy People program from Australia, and they had already been experimenting with park prescriptions in New Jersey and New Mexico. And so they put together a steering committee to determine whether it was a kind of a tool that would really take off and be useful in the United States. And so Dr. Czar was on that steering committee, and then, as Tamara mentioned, became the advisor to the National Park Service on park prescription. The model is deceptively simple. It has the three major components of parks, health care providers, and outreach. Basically, what we do is, if you look on our website, we have a map that kind of shows all the jurisdictions that we're in. We work with each park agency at the local, state, and national level. We collect about 40 pieces of information on each site, and we're constantly kind of refining that, what we call the park formulary, to make sure that we have the most recent, the most accurate, and the most appropriate information available to the doctors. We work with each of those agencies to regularly refresh that information and make sure it's accurate. We work also with healthcare providers, and we reach out to them all across the country. The model really requires us to have a champion doctor, similar to Dr. Czar in each jurisdiction, to kind of be the cheerleader, the media spokesperson, to get people really excited about the concept of park prescription. And in addition to that, because doctors always they're human and they fall back on what they, typically do, we need people to constantly remind them of the opportunity to prescribe. And so on our leaderboard, we now are in 27 states, and we have about 130 doctors prescribing. And it's really taking off. It's quite amazing, and you know, we're you know, really delighted with the level of interest. And some of the states on the map, we don't have many doctors prescribing, but it seems like every day we get a call from one of those states that don't have any parks. So we're always scrambling to get more parks up on the database. We have about 4,000 you know, parks in the database at the moment. So in our short period of time, we've got a lot of recognition. Just you know, last month at the SHIP Festival in Wyoming, we got the Jurors Award, and we just became a member of 1% for the Planet, which hopefully will help us you know, raise us much needed funds in order to sustain our operation. And we've gotten a lot of media coverage. Just this week, we have an excellent article in Time Magazine. This time last year, you know, there was a really nice segment on NBC News talking about our program and how it works. And over the summer, there was a really nice article in the New York Times. Partnerships. We started with the National Park Service. As I mentioned, you know, our roots are in public lands and you know, parks and recreation. Most recently, we've been working very closely with the people here at the U.S. Forest Service. We have an agreement where, you know, we're working very closely with Corazon Latino and others to work on outreach to the, you know, local community. I mentioned on that basic model, you know, there's one on outreach. And in order for park prescription to work, it's really important to have the local community aware of the opportunity to prescribe, and having, you know, people actually asking their doctor for a prescription. And that is much more powerful, I think, than, you know, constantly beating them out over the head to ask them to prescribe. So, and connecting to local park and recreation programs, which are just an excellent resource for creating a social capital and getting people outdoors with others. So that aspect of it is extremely important. More recently, we have an agreement with them to look at tree canopy. And as I mentioned, we have our park formulary. That's one of the pieces we really want to add to the formulary, where people can go to get a really good dose of nature in a forested environment. Also, I wanted to mention Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, which is where we're doing work with Montgomery County Parks. They have a number of nature centers, and sometimes doctors are hesitant or reluctant to prescribe because of somehow thinking that maybe parks are not safe. If the doctor does not have personal experience in visiting the site, you know, they may be a little hesitant. So park nature centers are just wonderful environments that are staffed, you know, have all of the amenities. Someone can go and get welcomed, you know, there, and if they don't have any personal experience of being outdoors, or they may be a little uncomfortable, you know, they can get guidance on how to go outdoors in a natural setting. However, a lot of these naturalists, just like the doctors, they didn't learn about you know, the health connection, you know, to nature, and so we're going to be working with those park naturalists to train them on the importance of nature and human health, and kind of complete that circle so that when the patients come and visit the nature center, they can get all of the guidance that they need. We're working with the University of Maryland. You know, one of my roles as executive director is to try to diversify the platform, show that it's just not clinics and hospitals. So we're working with the University of Maryland, and in the spring, we'll be launching the first campus Nature Rx program on the campus. And then we have our first corporate sponsor, the Steel Corporation, the German tool manufacturer. They have a big plant in Virginia Beach, and they have clinics, you know, in their plant, and those doctors will be prescribing using our platform. And just last week, we were delighted to have Governor Northam of Virginia, who's a pediatrician, endorse, you know, our platform, Park Rx America. Dr. Czar and Governor Northam together, you know, wrote a prescription for the Virginia State Parks mascot, and you can see the mascot is feeling much better after that prescription. So, in a nutshell, that's what we're doing, and I should say that Dr. Czar was really inspired by his visit to the Conroe Center in Texas. And that's really the genesis of our partnership with the U.S. Forest Service, and also has generated this excitement about doing an urban setting at Unity Healthcare where Dr. Czar works. So it all comes full circle. So thank you so much.
Thank you, John, and we really appreciate that vision and the opportunities that Parker X America could provide, again, and making these connections among doctors throughout the nation and their facilities, and potentially providing opportunities for nature explorer, therapeutic design landscapes, and again, having that support from your organization and that vision, I think is extremely powerful. And so congratulations on all the great work that you've done in just a short time period, and it's wonderful to see the growth that's happening. I am excited to also introduce our next speaker, Mr. Felipe Benitez, who is the Executive Director of Corazon Latino that John mentioned earlier. This is a wonderful organization that's helped us, to the Forest Service and many of our partners, to more deeply connect to Latino and other diverse audiences. Mr. Benitez has more than 15 years of experience designing and implementing strategic communications programs to empower and mobilize diverse communities on environmental and conservation issues. He's advised organizations such as the Forest Service, the Nature Conservancy, the Environmental Defense Fund, Natural Resources Defense Council, and to effectively engage Latino communities in their organizational priorities and their work. And so with that, I hope that you will join me in welcoming Mr. Felipe Benitez.
Thank you, Tamara, and thank you everybody for being here. And for those, I feel so tense about going after all these great speakers. Like, I don't have a lot to say, but hopefully we can. Corazon Latino was born over to sort of meet the need of how to engage, how to empower, how to mobilize communities of color in environmental issues. We saw a lot of research that was showing that the Latino communities were very, they were there. You didn't have to convince them about nature, about the benefits of green spaces. We just need to do something to activate them. So that's what we've been trying to figure out, and we've done a lot of testing, a lot of experimenting, and we find a lot of ways to really engage. And one of the ways we do is engaging the family. It's engaging and when we talk about the family, it's not just the central family or the nuclear family. Sorry, that was a word. It's mom, dad, or mom, dad, whatever. But it's everybody. It's los tíos, las tías, the abuelitos, everybody that's part of the, even the neighbor who's also part of the family. So how do we make them welcome, and how we make them active in environmental and conservation issues? So we developed some models, and we've been testing a lot of how to really go one back. Don't worry. No, one more. There you go. One. There. With we've also been around, not for a long time, but we've been doing a lot of very interesting, and with a lot of organizations have believed in our work and our model, and it's actually been very successful. Forest Service, Nature Conservancy, Parks America, NIF. How do we bring tools from both the strategic communications area, from social media, from traditional media, from even peer-to-peer word of mouth, into activating communities of color, into activating Latino communities. But also we do the what we call the grassroots activation. How do we also make sure that people go out, that they have a meaningful, joyful experience, and as John from Nature Exp was mentioning, it's how to make it a meaningful, want to make sure that they come back, that kids don't stay only for a few minutes, but they stay for 2 hours, and then the next day they want to come back. So that's what we've been trying to develop. How do we build, or how to create those meaningful experiences, not only for the individual, but for the families. So our model goes, as I mentioned, a little bit about touching or communicating messages through grassroots activities, through traditional media, and through digital strategies. We believe that in order for a family to really understand and grasp the message, we need to get it from different sources. One of them is the doctor, a trusted doctor. Another one would be probably the priest, somebody that they trust, the teacher, and why not the internet? It's important, or a meme or a graphic in social media. So when they get the message from different sources, people tend to act and tend to really activate around certain issues. So that's what we try to do, and that's what we follow this model. Next one, Ferdinand, please. For 3 years now, we've been very lucky to help manage this platform for the Forest Service called the Descubre el Bosque, co-managed with the Ad Council, where basically we're putting out information on a daily basis in Spanish language about nature, about forest, about health and nature, about all these topics that are important and that are priorities of the Forest Service, forest prevention. And we do it on a daily basis, Monday through Sunday. And we sometimes have to do more than one. So to our knowledge, there's not a lot of platforms that do this. And sorry for those who already saw this presentation a couple of days before. We did a similar webinar 2 days ago. So, and through this platform, we found a lot of interesting elements, a lot of tools, a lot of insights on how do we really get the message out. And we found that communities of color, Latino communities, are really interested in these issues, are really interested in conservation, are really interested in tree planting. Sometimes they don't have the information, and when they find that piece of information that it's interesting for them, boom, they share it, and then and they like, hey, Chelsea, look at this. Ferdinand, have you checked this out? And then they started to go viral. And we need to one of what we find is also that these communities probably are communicating through their phone. So how do we make this information available, shareable, and adequate to them? Sometimes it could be done in English, sometimes it could be done in Spanish, sometimes it could be a combination depending on who we're talking to. So that's something that we've learned through the Descubre el Bosque platform, which includes social media and a website. We've also done some work in traditional media, as I mentioned. So we've got out to Telemundo or Univision. We've gone to the local newspapers. We've gone to national newspapers and offered them information about health and nature, about forestry, about fire prevention, even about the eclipse last year and how you can enjoy it at a national forest. All of those topics are of great interest to media. We've had a couple of times Woodsy Owl go to the newscast in Telemundo because it makes good TV. But most important, topics that serve the community and that they are that producers, that journalists are interested in sharing. A year ago, we also did an interview around. It was a bad week. It was supposed to be just a 2-minute interview, and ended up being a 10-minute interview with Dr. Kim Winter. So we know that there's a great appetite for this type of topic, so it's important to utilize it. We also engage in other activities, that not only media and social media, but for example, for International Day of Forest, we hosted a webinar with Dr. Kathy Wolf on the benefits of green spaces. We generated this webinar that was attended for, I think, over 50 community leaders, and it was generated a lot of interest. And associated with that, we did this infographic in Spanish and in English that sort of tries to, I don't want to even say summary, but grasp some of the key elements of the research that she has led, and then make it available for folks to use, to share. There's throughout the summer, there's a lot of Twitter storms and activities where people talk about prescriptions or health and nature, and we try to push these materials out, and they're usually very well received. We also print those big the infographics as a poster and then share it in our events. And the other part that I was going to mention is the work that we do on the ground. This is some generous funding from the Forest Service, we were able to do a pilot program in which we organize events throughout the spring and the summer, in which we engage, as I mentioned, families. How do we bring families and how to create programming to really have a meaningful experience in green spaces? So when I'm thinking about Nature Explore and others, like how do we make sure that there's a curriculum or there's activities that will engage the family? And again, we're making sure not only the patients, but the caregivers. We used citizen science, we used Project Learning Tree, we invented a scavenger, invasive species scavenger hunt. We did gamification. We use a lot of forest bathing. So try to figure out what are those activities that are offered in a bilingual and a culturally relevant way that will attract and help those families and those patients to come back. Next one. And that's it. That's one of our events, and we had WITSI. We had 50 individuals from Maryland, Virginia, and Maryland, doing a camping trip. We could have probably had 10 times those, but we have limited spaces at North Bay, and we through 2 days we tried to offer educational activities, environmental education, curriculum, and including forest prevention. And in 2 days, we were able to generate 15 different activities and 15 different topics. I didn't even notice that they were actually learning. It was very fun. So anyhow, we'll be happy to figure out and provide some of those insights. We're creating some documents that share those best practices and insights that hopefully others can utilize and get this type of model on different places. So thank you very much.
Gracias, Felipe, and thank you for sharing these innovations that can really help all of these programs to generate opportunities to expand to those different communities surrounding connections to nature for improved health. And I asked Farjana to leave it on the slide because Farjana is serving as the Health and Nature Navigator Coordinator, and some of the Unity Healthcare families actually were at the North Bay event, in which they really deeply engaged in a lot of these activities with Corazon Latino. So I will now be able to turn the presentation over to Farjana Islam, who is the Health and Nature Navigator Program Coordinator here at the U.S. Forest Service, serving as a resource assistant and a conservation education program. And Farjana believes in the healing power of nature for improved mental, physical, and socio-emotional well-being. She recently executed discussions at the 2018 Shift Public Lands and Public Health Conference that John mentioned just a while ago, and actually served on a panel with John Jarvis and many others. She served as such an amazing emerging leader. She was actually selected for the Emerging Leader Program there due to her work in managing the Health and Nature Navigators Program at the U.S. Forest Service in collaboration with Parker X America, Unity Healthcare, Corazon Latino, and others. And she is an Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guide in training. She just went through the training a little over a month ago, and I just am really grateful to Farjana, who has helped put this entire presentation together. Her energy and her enthusiasm are just simply contagious, and she is an amazing navigator of many kinds, and we call her our cross-pollinator. So with that, let me turn it over to Farjana, our cross-pollinator.
So I just want you all to look at this beautiful picture, and this picture was at the Center for Nature and Health at the UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital in California. And that center is pioneered by Dr. Nusheen Razani, who's also part of the park prescription movement, and they've been doing a lot of health and nature research out there. So giving a shout out, just because also in this picture is Woodsy Owl, and he's our conservation icon of our nation. He says to lend a hand, care for the land, and give a hoot and don't pollute. And so the Woodsy Owl Conservation Corps is a program of the U.S. Forest Service that empowers youth to use tools like Woodsy and have Woodsy as a symbol for
to teach the next and present generations of environmental stewards, just like that little girl with all the Woodsy Owl stickers on her shirt. And they do this through environmental education activities, tree and pollinator garden planting, and exposure to natural resource career pathways, among a number of different things. So my colleague, Juan Lazo, is currently in California, getting a Woodsy Owl conservation course started up there. So shout out to him, but also to Nushin and the team over there, because they're looking for a Nature Explorer site at that hospital as well. So the Woodsy Owl Conservation Corps is currently in Texas, Colorado, Puerto Rico, and is looking to expand in California, like I mentioned, and to DC. And a key component of that, and that works in tandem with the Woodsy Owl Conservation Corps, is the Health and Nature Navigator program, which I run. So the Health and Nature Navigators are folks who guide patients and providers in nature through local green spaces to connect them to national forests, national parks, their public lands, but starting from their backyard. So they use tools such as the Parker X America Finder tool, Discover the Forest and Descubra el Bosque map tools, as well as Agents of Discovery, which is a gamification app, so it's similar like Pokemon Go, to connect kids to cultural, natural, and historical resources in their area. So with the Health and Nature Navigators, they decrease the barriers of access, knowledge, and fear about nature, and help patients, providers understand where to go, what to do, and fill their park prescriptions. So, and this all works in a vision of promoting the health benefits of nature, and in turn that would encourage environmental stewardship actions. So currently, I am the only Health and Nature Navigator solo running at the Unity Healthcare Center, Upper Cardozo, where Dr. Czar practices, and the program has
I go help you sometime.
And Tam really helps out too. And I was going to mention that. But currently, I'm an official Health and Nature Navigator. And it's blossomed from a partnership with Parker X America. So the program has been running for about 4 months, and we're currently working through the Unity Healthcare Wellness Program, which focuses on nutrition and physical activity. And I'm there to help integrate health and nature. So this is a picture of the Girard Street Community Garden. Right there in the purple is Dr. Chloe Turner, who also does park prescriptions. And she and me and the families, we go out, and every month they go work with City Blossoms to garden and harvest the plants. So I was there running around doing iNaturalist and citizen science, and me and a few of the boys discovered lemon balm, which is super amazing, and was talking about, oh, you feel better outside? And we're like, yes, it's amazing outside. So just planting those seeds of feeling better in nature. Actually, one of the boys from the program this past Wednesday told me that when he's stressed, without a prompt from me, he's like, when I get really stressed, I just go outside and I breathe the air, and I look at the trees, and I ask my mom every time I'm stressed about school to go outside. So it's been really beautiful to see. And when we're thinking about and talking about the health benefits of nature that we receive, that so many people have talked about already, about decreased heart rate and blood pressure, it's important to understand the relationship between forest health and human health. So the forest health protection staff, along with the conservation education staff at the Forest Service, have been really supportive in this effort to educate the families, and they've been working with Corazon Latino as well with these different outings to talk about invasive species, emerald ash borer, the different health issues that are affecting these forests, and how improving them or finding solutions to them can actually improve human health. So right here on the left is a picture of the families. One of the Wednesdays we went out with the National Park Service and Rock Creek Conservancy in Rock Creek Park, which is their national park in their backyard, and they learned about the different benefits that trees provide in terms of shade, decreased heart rate, blood pressure, cooling, and wildlife habitat. So they understood, wow, the trees give so much to me, let me give back to the trees. So it's important to recognize health and nature, but also forest health and human health. So I mentioned the different activities that we do through the Health and Nature Navigators program and try to connect patients and providers to nature. So one of them is planting trees and native plants for pollinators. So we're envisioning at the Unity Healthcare site in DC that there's a pollinator garden. Potentially, I know that Dr. Porter and Texas A&M Forest Service is working on creating a pollinator garden at their Nature Explore site, so that's going to be really exciting to see. Also thinking about professional development opportunities for those who are health and nature navigators, so getting trained in Project Learning Tree and iTree and MyTree and iTree and MyTree that are tools to help understand the valuation and the ecosystem services that trees and forests in general provide in neighborhoods and connecting families with environmental education activities. Another component is engaging physical activity indoors and outside. So on the upper right-hand corner is Luis Angel Cruz, part of the Houston Woodsdale Conservation Corps. He's been working to bring Zumba into outside, inside, everywhere with Woodsy. And Tamberly actually came out with me for a few outings at Unity Healthcare and provided a Zumba class right outside the Gerard Street Community Garden. It was great. Some folks in the public just jumped in and started dancing too. So integrating physical activity into nature and understanding the health benefits of nature that way and different avenues that we can do so. So while people are speeding up and dancing around, maybe some people want to slow down. So we are also integrating nature and forest therapy walks. Tamberly did not mention she is also in training to be a nature and forest therapy guide. So Toby Bloom, who's actually in the room right now, she led a walk for the patients and the providers and the doctors at Unity Healthcare, as well as the patients at the wellness program, along with other trained nature and forest therapy guides with the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs to understand the connection to nature themselves and each other, and through a mindful walk through nature in a group, so people are safe and they feel comfortable being in nature and walking slowly and just really getting that connection there. So we're really excited to have that, and that would be really cool to have at a Nature Explore site. So from my perspective, with the Health and Nature Navigators program, to have a Nature Explore site on the rooftop inside Unity Healthcare is so key for this wellness program to exist. For example, this past Wednesday, they ended their season with City Blossoms just because it's starting to get really cold here in winter and snowed yesterday. So unfortunately, the patients and the families won't be able to go outside as easily as they could, but if they can just walk right down the hall or go up to the roof to access a community garden, Nature Explorer site, they can be like, I'm so connected to nature here, let me go outside. And all of the kids are like, when are we going outside? So especially with that Nature Explorer site, I think it's paramount to having the Health and Nature Navigator program as a success, not only here in DC, but in other places too. And I mentioned that I am the only Health and Nature Navigator, so we're definitely looking for folks to be public health professionals, park employees, interns who are willing to jump up and team up. So thank you all for being here on this webinar. I will continue going back to my day job as a webinar coordinator.
You're fabulous at that, but you're fabulous at so many things. Yes, very, very talented young lady we have here. Thank you so much, Farjana. It was quite an inspiration, and I think it really does help to wrap everything around, because in reality, when we started working with Woodsdale Conservation Corps, and those Woodsdale Conservation Corps dollars were allocated to establish those, Michiko Martin, our former Director of Conservation Education, said, I'd really like to see these connected to Nature Explorer sites. So actually in Texas, John Warner and Dr. Porter are working with the Woodsdale Conservation Corps there. So they are really Health and Nature Navigators. They just haven't really linked into that mode of branding, I guess we could say. But that is one of the visions. And I know Annie Hermanson Baez, who is there at the Shan site, well, with the Forest Service, but working on the Shan site, actually planted the Zumba seed in Texas about 5 years ago with these young people who are now doing Zumba with Woodsy Owl. So I think she's going to want to have a Woodsy Owl Conservation Corps Health and Nature Navigator site at Shan. And again, this is just something that we see growing out, blossoming and blooming. And there are just a variety of connections that we've seen here today among researchers, practitioners, folks who are really driving to connect diverse audiences in this way. And so we are, again, envisioning these opportunities for growth. And if you have any ideas, again, the contact information is in most of the slides here. Please feel free to reach out to Sonia Rangel and her information is in the second slide,
for any updates, and we will be also, I will send out a follow-up with a webinar link to the archived webinar, and then also any of the resources that our speakers today would like to provide. So we'll probably set that up in a Google Drive or something of that nature so that you can access all of those wonderful products and materials. And again, here we see to the right on your screen, this is Unity Healthcare. And this mural was just established by a local artist. And I think that is kind of forming a gateway. The vision is to actually have a small Nature Explorer therapeutic landscape site in the front with vegetation, some more trees that would guide people into, and it would serve the community. I mean, we see some folks sitting here on the bench. Imagine them sitting within, you know, just a short distance from more vegetation, more respite, and then leading into the facility where some of the nature-based pieces would be on the floors where the doctors are actually prescribing nature. And then on the rooftop is an actual space where we're all envisioning this area of respite where doctors and patients and staff could go to the space for improved health. And I know that we are just 1 minute over time. So what we'll do is, if there are any questions out there, if people still want to hang on the line, you're welcome to. We can continue having this on. We don't need to shut down, but we will wrap up now, knowing that we're a minute over. Thank you everyone for joining us today for this webinar about nature and health and how Nature Explorer has been one of those drivers of igniting a fire around this work and helping to inspire so many other of the nature-based activities. So we thank you all of our speakers for joining us today and sharing your valuable insight, knowledge, and vision for the future. Thank you, everyone.
And Kimberly, I want to jump in. That picture on the left, I remember that day. Oh my gosh, we went out onto the roof. We climbed through a window. We got out onto the roof. And we were looking around, and you two Wizzy Owl folks were picking up trash, which is why there's a pile of trash there. And then we got stuck outside. We got locked out. And there was a lock on the windows to get back in. So that's the kind of nature access that we're trying to organize is better than the experience that we had. We did go outside, and it was lovely, but, you know, we created obviously. So wouldn't it be nice if lots of people could go outside without having to climb through the window, easily get back indoors, and have lots more plant material out there for them.
Great vision.
So I just want to mention that the picture on the left is from the Unity Healthcare site in Parkside, which is near the Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens, and the one on the right is the Unity Healthcare site in Upper Cardozo, where Health and Nature Navigators and ParkRx kind of operates in that sense. But we're definitely thinking of having Nature Explorer sites in all the Unity sites. That would be amazing. So in terms of questions, Susan Cox asked if Naomi's Gate tool is available online.
It is not online yet. I'm happy to email it, and I can email you the whole dang dissertation if you want. Tool to help you fall asleep. But yeah, anyone can email me. And actually, we will be doing a webinar. I don't have the exact date. I think it might be December. Anyway, yeah, coming up mid-December for the research assistants who are going to do the pre-occupancy evaluation data collection at Shands, but anyone is welcome to that webinar training for the gate, and then the next week we'll have a webinar training for the behavior mapping. So you're welcome to email me, and I will send you more follow-up information for that.
And would you like me to include on the follow-up to everyone that's on all the participants? I mean, I can
sure
that as one of
that would be great. Yeah, thank you.
Are there any more questions?
Just a comment from Sandy Frost. Hey, Sandy. So she said, have you connected with Thelma Reddick of the Wildlife Habitat Council? They work with for-profits for enhancing corporate lands for multiple fish and wildlife benefits and do wonderful work with communities. Excellent webinar. Oh, thanks, Sandy. So that was a comment. Are there any other questions? You can put it in the chat box or the Q&A box.
I do know Thelma, Sandy. I'm not connected with her specifically around this, but that's a fabulous idea because, for instance, if is a Nature Explorer therapeutic landscape site located somewhere, their partners and their volunteers would come out and help support, because that is always one of the aspects, you know, who's going to care for this site? Who's going to maintain it? And we were actually at Unity today, and one of them, I think she is a staff member there, Mirna, came up and said, oh, how I would love to have a vegetable garden on the rooftop. I would be willing to take care of it, and I would be willing to join forces with others on the staff to do so. So it's that type of enthusiastic support that we need to see from these different spaces. And I'll also mention, oh no, Toby left the room. But we'll pass along that on Wednesday evening, Farjana and I were at the Unity Healthcare Wellness Program, and one of the fathers came up, and he had been to an event that Corazon Latino had helped to facilitate called Rio Palusa, and that was the first time that Toby delivered a nature and forest therapy session, and she did it bilingually. It was her first session to deliver bilingually, and then the one that she did at Unity later was full-blown Spanish. We were so excited and proud of Toby, but he actually came up to me and said, I just want to let you know that that was powerful. It was such an incredible experience to like be driven into nature, guided there, and to really like sense my surroundings. And it was he, his wife, and his children. And they were all from El Salvador. They all participated, and they all shared what they were noticing in Spanish and during that session. It was really powerful. So I wanted to convey that to Toby. Now it's on the webinar.
And that experience was over 4 months ago, so the fact that the family totally really remembered it is super beautiful. Susan Cox also says that Project Home is a good source for communities to develop habitat gardens. It's designed to complement Project Wild.
Thank you, Susan. Any more comments or questions from the field?
If there are any other questions, feel free to write in the chat box or the Q&A box.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments in the room? And we thank you all for being here today. And thank you.
Thank you for organizing it.
Oh, no, this was a great team effort. Again, I thank Arjanita, Chelsea, Tonya. Ay, gracias. Muchas gracias. Thank you all. All right. Have a fabulous weekend, everyone. It's beautiful out there here, and hopefully wherever you are. But it's beautiful.
Thank you guys for everything, Ms. Dr. Porter.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Porter. I look forward
and
to
while we were talking, a mom and 2 kids were out having fun on the space.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It's wonderful. All right. Thanks, Dr. Porter. I hope to see you soon. I'll drag Naomi with me. Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye. It was fun.
You guys worked so hard on that.